the last 2 years, you know? Yeah.
Totally. We're a little past 4, so folks, go ahead and get going. There is beer, just to be clear. There's beer in the back of the room, and if anybody wants to start free drinking now, if you aren't already.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, nobody will judge, right? So thanks for everybody for coming. I'm Laura Dierks. I'm from Interboro Spirits and Ales down in Brooklyn. I'm on the board and get the lovely privilege of introducing all these great people who have volunteered to present. Brandon Espinosa is here from Brooklyn Brewery. I'm going to give you a little short.
Bronx.
Bronx Brewery. This is not Now I'm going to read the intro you gave me. So thank you, Kevin, for coming to do this talk for us about building community. Brandon, the salsa pops Espinosa, is a New York native born to a Puerto Rican mother and Cuban father. He's a first-generation college graduate from the hotel school at Cornell, where he learned all about business management and hospitality. 5 years ago, he became the first Latino to work at Bronx Brewery and manage community engagement, events, and venues, and then became their brewery VP of brand and partnerships. Aside from that, he's been working in his role at Bronx Brewery. He's been the founder of the Salsa Project, which aims to protect, preserve, and ensure salsa music doesn't die among younger generations. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to you and drink more coffee.
Can you guys hear me like this, or should I use the mic? Yeah. Well, awesome, guys. Happy Friday. Actually, I should move my laptop over here so I can move through it. Happy Friday. Super excited to be here. Today I'll be talking about... Did I move it too much? There you go. Today I'll be talking about the importance of building community through a DEI lens. No, it's a big topic in the industry, and before I get into talking about what we're doing, I want this to be very much of a dialogue. So if you have questions, thoughts, if you disagree, I want this to be an open space to kind of explore the answers together. What I'm going to use is the work that I've done at the Bronx Brewery as a case study. It's like kind of funny because I'll go out to different industry events and be out in the market, and people will be like, "Oh, Bronx Brewery, you guys are doing so much for the community," and they'll start there and talk about the beer after, right? And I think that's very intentional with the way we positioned ourselves as a brand, because it's very much the core and DNA of what we do, right? I think there's a lot of incredible beer out there. Many of you here representing great breweries. We all make great beer, right? And our IPA may be better, your Pilsner may be better, but at the end of the day, it's like, what are you doing and why does it matter? And I think we could all agree that the landscape of this industry and of the world more largely is changing. And so for us 5 years ago, I joined the Bronx Brewery. So I want to talk a little bit about myself. I was born in the Bronx, and the Bronx Brewery was the first brewery in the Bronx since the early 1960s. And so I start there because if you know anything about the Bronx, it's a very, very diverse community. Low socioeconomic status, people from all walks of life, many blue-collar workers, a lot of factories, and it's also the home of hip-hop. It's the home of salsa. It's the home of graffiti. So all of these textures and colors that make up this incredible borough. And so as I was going through life, I'm the product of a father who worked in hospitality for 4 years. And so I knew I wanted to be in hospitality when I was graduating from Cornell. And upon graduating, I wrote into our founder, one of our co-founders named Damien, and I was like, "Hey man, from the Bronx, like I know you're just starting, would love a job." And he's like, "Not looking," right? And I think we could all understand like the bootstrap mentality when you're starting a brewery, but I was just super excited. So I went on to do a few things in the nonprofit space, community being a big part of that. Some stuff in fashion, started 2 companies. 2014, they opened their tap room. And as many of you know, tap rooms during that time were tap rooms, right? You taste beer and then you get to go. And now tap rooms are a driving force behind many of our businesses. So 2014, I start going to the tap room and I write in again, hey, Damien, like, your brewery's great. Like, would love to work for you. Sorry, dude, not looking. It's like, fair. And so I started going to this tap room and I started immersing myself in this craft beer culture. A culture that was like foreign to me, right? My dad, growing up, I would see him drinking like Corona, Heineken, Bud, like very simple beers, cheap beers, and this world of craft was just foreign to me. And so, when I was in college, right, drinking a lot of PBRs and Natty Lights, and finally, my senior year, I was able to like buy craft beer, right? I had a job, and it was Allagash and Ithaca Brewing that really introduced me to the craft space. And then what really supported that was the Bronx. And so I started going to this brewery, and it just didn't resonate with me. I was like, it's the Bronx, and what's happening here isn't Bronx, right? And it felt like it was a brewery that came into an area, and like as many of you will, probably are experiencing in some of your markets and whatnot, is like gentrification, right? The G word, gentrification. I think gentrification is fine if it's done correctly, right? And not displacing people and whatnot. And many of our breweries aren't in areas where people are being displaced because we're in industrial areas where you can get a lot of space for brewing equipment. And so I started to think about that a lot. And it was in the end of at the beginning of 2017, I was at an event and I went up to Damien. I don't know if you guys know Damien, but I was like, dude, your brewery's great, but it's missing a few things, and I think I can make it a little better. Give me an opportunity to sit with you. And so what I did is I went in there with a deck. He gave me the opportunity, and I laid out 3 things that he was missing that were fundamental to his business, all rooted around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And often when we talk about DEI work, the analogy I like to use is like, I don't want to get invited to the table, but I want to get invited to dance. And when you start that dance and that movement, that's truly the texture where you're able to just totally transform the way people engage with your business. And it's important, right? We do this work because it's important to us as people, more than beer, and we really believe in beer's power to bring people together. So fast forward, I landed a job there as a community and engagement manager, which community engagement manager for a brewery, it's incredible, right? And I do really well in that role. I start doing events, a lot of different events, right? Because I also think when people think of diversity, they think black, brown. No, it's diversity, right? Diversity of gender, diversity of ethnicity, diversity of thoughts, like all of that is inculcated in what diversity at least means to me and to us at the Bronx Brewery. So I start there, end up becoming the GM of the brewery for about 2.5 years, running our taproom business, our backyard business, and then ultimately got moved into the VP of brand role on the executive team, and really thinking strategically about how we grow and how we show up in the on and off premise. And now our second location that we just opened up in East Village about a month ago, and some new projects that we have in the pipeline that are to come. So that's a little bit about me and how I got here. So a lot of like what I'm going to talk about today is around the work and almost like case studies around what we have done and why I think we can. So moving along here, this is how I'm going to guide you through the presentation. And again, I want this to be a dialogue. So if you have a question, why did he do that? Or, tell me about this, or I think that, please stop me. But it's going to be why we do what we do, how we do what we do, and talking about like the different things that we do, and then what's next for us and why we keep doing this, because it is a true investment. So why? So we really believe in beer's power to bring people together. There are very few things in this world that are universal, and I think food and beverage are some of them. Music can be another. And so we use beer as a vehicle to bring communities and people of all walks of life together in our spaces. And we look at our space as a community hub, right? We don't get obsessive about the beer, right? We want everybody to have our beer. There aren't lines out the door. like, hey, we need your beer, we need your beer, we need your beer. It's meant to be this community space where you can come after a long day of work, or you can come after a loss and you're grieving somebody, and creating that space that feels safe. And so this is why we do it. We do good because we care. You know, at the end of the day, we're all humans. We all have our lived experiences. And I think it's our responsibility to leave the world a better place than we left it, right? And that's something that is ingrained in our team at the Bronx. The changing landscape of the world is changing, right? You know, if you try to do what you did 10 years ago, good luck, you know, and depending where you're at in the world, you know, New York City, good luck, you know, if you're in Omaha, Nebraska, maybe, right? But like, the landscape of our world in general is changing, and you're seeing it across brands. And what I want to call out there is it's moving from having DEI work just be a checkbox to actually ingraining it in the DNA and the values, right? So for us, DEI is very important, and it's a lived experience. So the suppliers we work with go through that lens. The people we hire, the events we throw, how we make our beer, all go through this DEI lens, which is one of our values, right? So as I go through the presentation, I'll talk about our values, which are outlined here: community, creativity, and inclusivity. That's what drives our business, right? And you gotta make good beer, but good beer is table stakes. You're not making good beer, yeah, it's gonna be really tough to survive. So it's about, like, what else are you doing? Any questions? So now I'm going to dive into, you know, some of the things that we've done. Again, I can talk on this topic and the work that we've done for a long time. But I wanted to highlight some of the big ones, and hopefully some things that you guys can look into at your respective breweries that you can bring back as ideas. But this has been one of the most exciting for me. So we are one of the few breweries in the US that has a production internship. And we've had this for about 5 years. Where we bring people who don't know how to get into the industry, and we give them a 1 month to 2 month internship where they are just engrossed and ingrained into what production is, right? They see the good, the bad, right? We all know brewing is a lot of cleaning, right? And they're like, wait, I thought it was like throwing stuff into the kettle in the mash tun and then, whoo, beer. It's a lot of cleaning, right? And so we had this internship program, and it was going great. And, you know, as we started to really find our DNA, it was like, how can we make it better? And beer culture is how we made it better. And so beer culture is an organization, they're national, and anybody can be part of their internship. But essentially they focus on bringing people from underserved communities, people that identify as Black, Indigenous, people of color, into the beer space, right? Just an additional hurdle to get into that space. And so a year ago, we started that program, thanks to many sponsors, some that are here today, to help us fund that program. But we give the interns some money in the form of a stipend, and then we immerse them in a curriculum. And you know, I'd be remiss, Manny here, raise your hand, Manny. Manny is our lead brewer in the Bronx and oversees our pilot down in the East Village, but he's one of the main drivers and is responsible for that curriculum and really ingraining that community into our work. And so, proud to say, we've hired probably about half of the people that have gone through this 2-month internship, and they're women, they're people of color, and it's just really been such a wonderful thing for our brewery because it's offered so much perspective and has literally transformed the lives of people who didn't know how or where to start in this industry. So, wanted to start there, and this is, again, if you want to pull me offline, happy to chat more about it, but there are a lot of resources. Are any of you familiar with beer culture? Yeah. Do any of you have programs at your breweries that are working with beer culture? Awesome. So hopefully you feel less strongly about it as we do. You know, we're bringing it back for a second year with beer culture. So. All right, events and programming. So, yes. Have any of you been to our location in the Bronx? Awesome, awesome. Brad, yeah, Bill, our neighbor. So we're fortunate enough to have an incredible space, large production floor, tap room in the front of our building, an incredible backyard that holds about 500 people, which you saw on the title slide, and then you see up here in the top left. And so when I moved into my, started my community events role and GM role, programming was really important. When I was going there, it was like trivia, another trivia night, great, all right. Acoustic guitar in the backyard, great, yeah, beer, nice. But I wanted to really fine tune what we meant for the community and what the community meant to us. And so I started building programming based on the people that came to our brewery, on the community that we were so fortunate to be a part of. And a lot of that revolved around the things I mentioned earlier, right? It was there for me. Salsa, hip hop, R&B, we do acoustics, live bands, comedy nights, what have you. And it just became ingrained in what we were doing and just brought out such a diverse clientele, right? So now you had people from all walks of life sipping craft beer in the South Bronx. The most beautiful thing, right? And so some of the things that we're highlighting here is like bomba, right? Like, any of you guys do bomba nights? Probably not. Like, I've been to over 100 craft breweries around the world, just researching and doing work in this space, and it doesn't exist, right? But it's actually alive and well and part of many of our cultures if you look at it. So we did that, right? Live music, supporting the live arts, but not just like the acoustic guitar, like also bringing in like, rock bands and R&B bands and what have you, just thinking about it in a grander scope. So that's what that's kind of highlighting there. We started doing video game tournaments. Like, again, diversity of everything. It's not just like race, ethnicity, gender, it's diversity of everything, right? And making this inclusive hub and space. So we started doing like arcade video nights, huge success, right? And bringing in partners from the community that were passionate about this to do the work, right? I would say, if I can speak for a lot of us, we're small businesses, startup, there isn't much money to fund somebody to just focus on events. I get it. What I'm trying to say is that all of this exists in your community, and it's at your fingertips. It's whether or not you care about it enough to activate it. And at the top, giving back has just been part of our DNA forever. We give away, tens of thousands of dollars, whether it's in cash or product, year in, year out, through the pandemic, no pandemic. That is just who we are, and we're fortunate enough to do so. And so with that highlighting is we have an annual Thanksgiving drive that we do every year, where, again, anybody here can do this. We invite local partners in to donate food to this drive, and we feed those in need, and we brew a beer specific to that we donate to the causes. Any questions? Everybody's like, dude, I'm ready for you to be done so I can go party.
No, we're not. No, keep going.
It's always tough being like the last session before everybody's like, let's do it.
The best session so far.
Well, thank you guys. So, collaboration series. Super excited about this. This is one of my babies in the Bronx. So, when we got there, there's just this richness of creativity, right? And I think that exists in all of our communities. I think the Bronx is very much in your face. But I would say we're all creatives in some way, shape, or form, whether you're a brewer, whether you're an artist, an owner, what have you. And so we started to think about our portfolio, right? And how do we take this idea of DEI and now influence our portfolio? How our distributors think of beer, right? Distributed for Union in New York, in the city, and how do we get them to buy in to what we're doing? And so we made a drastic shift in our portfolio and ended up rearranging our beers to have core beers, right? The ones that are tried and true, 365 days out of the year. Our seasonal beers, so either 3 to 6 months, right? Summer does really well, so we keep it 6 months. And then this third vertical, right? And this requires money, investment, time, and that is something that excited me, is that our board and our owners really got behind this initiative. And so here you see the evolution of that series. And I think that's another point that I want to make here is like, just do it. There's never going to be the perfect time. Try it, and it's going to evolve and iterate over time. And so we started a program that was called Beat Tracks. And the goal here was like, how do we involve our community of artists and creatives into our space and have a charitable component to every beer we put out. And that's what this was. This was a collaboration with Baldor Foods, where they would donate foods to include in our beers. So everything from yuzu to what did Triple Musketeer have? Grapes. Yeah, Muscat grapes. You name it, right? We would put it in this beer. That then morphed to up and comers, right? And so we wanted to start to fine tune like who we work with, right? We opened up this application process and the floodgates opened, right? So many people wanted to be a part of craft beer in some way, shape, or form. And so we were like, okay, let's start to now focus on those that haven't came yet, but they're on the up and up, right? And everything from artists, poets, writers, musicians, chefs, mixologists, all of that was a part of the series. And ultimately now, the series is called the Y series. So one of the beers, both beers that you see in the back are part of our up-and-comer series and Y series. So that's why we brought those beers today, so you can read a little bit about the artists that are behind them, if there are any charitable components behind them. But that was the evolution of this series. And with each and every beer that we put out via this vertical, so we were doing 24 beers a year here, meaning working with 24 different partners. Now we've cut back to 12 because, as you can imagine, it is a lot. But very thoughtful and methodical, and each of these beers has a charitable component and came back to a local organization. Here you're going to see some of the release events that we've done. Pride is huge for us. We go all in. We had a drag night. It was one of the best nights in the Bronx. Henna, we dropped a beer during the whole age of 8 time. We were like, we need to do a beer. We need to work in an organization that speaks to ending age of hate and does work in the community. So we released a Mango Lassie beer. Brew Crew, the bottom right, it's a local run group, right? Again, and I put these examples up here because they all exist in our communities, right? Run clubs, this club, that club, but it's a matter of thinking about it. And so we work with a local run club, and they run like 10 miles and then pull up at the brewery and drink beer. It was their beer, right, that we collaborate with them on. And then we have, so I don't know, anybody know Jesus and Marrow? Yeah, so we did a beer with Jesus and Marrow. It was super cool. That was probably the most like celebrity-like beer we've ever put out. It was insane. Jesus is a big Bronx guy. He's all over the Bronx all the time, wanting to do beer. And we were like, of course we will. So I'm gonna stop here. I'm gonna show 2 videos that highlight recaps of some of these releases, just so you can get a feel for who's there, the energy, what it looks like. So this first one is a release for Concrete Jungle. Concrete Bloom, which is a beer we just released last month ago. Who came to our space and did live painting and had a panel discussion with a DJ on our brewery floor. So that is an example of a release, and then here's a different example. This one is Blacktop. So the beer in the back is Blacktop, which is an Imperial Stout that we did with an artist who's actually pretty known in the Bronx named Cess, and graffiti artist forever, old school. And this was the recap for his.
I'ma make noise in the street, please. All the fake love you could keep, please. You can't fuck with my energy. You can't fuck with my energy. Cease. I'ma make noise in the street, please. All the fake love you could keep, please. You can't fuck with my energy. You can't fuck with
So as you'll see there, two different types of energies, same program of our Y series, and just using our space as that community hub. Next, a program that I really want to highlight. So we did this, we launched this last year. So we rebranded, the first beer we ever made was an American Pale Ale. That's why we're in business. Yeah, we've had it for 10 years. And it's been the backbone of who we are. But I would say that DNA has changed, right? We started to do one thing, do it right, and now if you're not making it a hazy IPA, you're lost. So IPAs have become a huge part of our business with many of our accounts, and you guys all know how it goes, right? If Trader Joe's wants an IPA, you make the IPA for Trader Joe's, and you have fun in the other verticals of your business. And so here we launched this program, so we were thinking about, all right, APA, we want to give it a facelift. It's like, great. Brandon's in the executive team meeting, like, yeah, we're gonna add DEI to that. Like, good, but like, how are we gonna make it inclusive, cool? What's the give back, right? And it's different for everything, right? And so we relaunched our APA, and we committed funding to supporting public arts. So supporting artists in their community to create work to either beautify or leave a mark in their community. And it's called the Public Arts Initiative. So we're coming up on our last 2 artists from year 1, because we started it in Q3, so it's a Q3, 4, 1, and 2. And then we'll do another class where we partnered with a spray paint company called AA, where they provide all of the spray paint. We provide a stipend to the artist to go produce art in whatever community they want that resonates with them via this Public Arts Initiative. So here you see our first 2 artists that have created incredible, beautiful works of art powered through beer. Again, hopefully you're seeing kind of the storytelling here is like everything we do is tied to community, inclusivity, creativity. And so this is a program that will run another year, which we're super excited for. And hopefully we'll get bigger and better, and hopefully you see some of these works of art in your communities, powered by artists. Most meaningful moment in my Bronx brewery tenure has been this. Pandemic hit, right? Changed our lives completely. Luckily, we're in an industry that I would say is kind of recession-proof, which is alcohol. But when you lose your entire on-premise overnight, and you don't have a structure that's built to pivot, it's tough. I'm sure many of you probably saw your off-premise sales shoot up as people were buying and taking home. But for us, it hit hard, and we had a furlough, many on our taproom team, and we were like, man, what's the future of Bronx? And in that moment, I think it really tested who we were as a brand and as a company. And proud to say that through that time of hemorrhaging money and keeping a team employed and making beer, we donated over 10,000 cans of beer to frontline workers. So this is a photo of our first drop at a hospital in the Bronx that was just slammed by COVID cases. And I will never forget getting there, you know, and all the doctors are like, oh, we're clapping, and like clapping for us, like we're clapping for you, right? And, you know, we get a mask, a hat, the foot coverings, and it, you know, it made it to the New York Times, which, again, none of that was our goal, right? It was just to like take care of our community and give back to our community. And long hours, long days, just have a piece of that. And we were fortunate on one of our runs to work with some other local craft breweries, Coney Island, Brooklyn Brewery, partnered on that with us for one of our runs. But we did this for 10 weeks straight, going to firehouses, police stations, hospitals, delivering beer. Again, beer, the ability of beer to bring people together. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure we all have stories about the pandemic and how it hit us. So what's next? You know, about to conclude my presentation here. You know, I was very involved in opening this East Village location, which I said we opened about a month ago, hunting down the SLA for our liquor license. But happy to be open. And I bring up this tap room because I think we'll open many more tap rooms in our future. I don't know if you guys are seeing this, but it seems like it's the future for a lot of craft beers. How do you bring people into your space and create a connection that's authentic and engaging and allows people to really sense the DNA of who you are? And so when we were scouting this location, we were like, foot traffic, right? Because you know, many of us are in industrial areas and destination locations, but that's not why we settled on the East Village. We settled on the East Village because it was a community that we felt really aligned with who we were as a brand and very diverse in nature. And so we opened this on February 5th of this year, where we actually brew here. We have a 1-barrel pilot system. The piece that I wanted to really highlight is that it was important to bring our community along. And so the wall there is painted by Andre Trenier, who's a local Bronx artist. If you're ever in this space, you're going to see a ton of nods to local artists, community, zest. And then that wasn't enough. We're in a new neighborhood, a new community. So it was starting anew and inviting those in our community back in to be a part of it. So this Saturday, tomorrow, actually, we're releasing a beer, a Brett beer with Mikey Likes an Ice Cream. It's a local ice cream parlor in Harlem and the LES. And that's going to be a fun pilot system for us. But now just, again, kind of pivoting, starting new, and thinking about what does this community look like? How can we invite them in? And so I guess in closing here, this is the message that I want everything that I said to lead up to, is people are like, Brandon, what do you do for a living? I'm like, I drive revenue through impact. That's what I do. Like, we don't do this because it, you know, hits the bottom line in a big way. We give back so much. Every beer, like I said, tens of thousands of dollars, whether it's through beer or cash. We do this because we care, but it will have impact in your business. And so, it's not easy. It's this very textured thing, right? Diversity, talking about race. And again, we live in a very sensitive world these days. And I would just challenge everybody to think about this industry as like, what if I could do something a little different? What would it be? And that was what it was for me. Kid from the Bronx, New York, didn't grow up with much. Never thought I'd be working in craft beer. And now, you know, I'm a partner in leading, you know, a brewery that is really rooted in the sense of community and bringing creatives and others along. So driving revenue through impact is what we do, is what I do. So I'm gonna end there. Some things that I'm gonna highlight right now in closing is proud to say that about 50% of our workforce identifies as Black, Indigenous people of color. A third of our workforce are women. And we're going to continue to challenge ourselves to be the best we can be, to show up for our community, and always be rooted in DEI. So It's not about checking the box and inviting you to the table. I want you to invite me out to dance. And you guys can also do that. So thank you guys for your time and being here.